have your inputs. So it permits also, and it will permit us, if we are called to collaborate in the future, to better know your expectation, your reality, and what you are working with, and what you are expecting to go to. Okay, so it is 12. Well, I suggest that it's 11 for you, so I suggest that we go till noon of your local time, and then after you go for lunch break for 2 hours. So it will let me some slack to um, to add a few illustrations for what we have to do this afternoon. So first, is there any question right now? Any remark? Anything you would like to say?
Any questions from anyone from previous sessions? I think no questions.
No questions so far. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
So you want the break to be by 12 p.m., right? That is 1
Yes,
p.m. for you.
if you don't mind.
Okay. Okay,
So
no
we can
problem.
have, let's say, a small hour here. Um, and as I said, as an introduction, I would like to close the hardware topic this morning. So
Okay.
all questions are welcome in this regard. As per said, it's not only it can be related to network if you have question to network, but it will be related to network hardware. Storage the same. If you have questions about storage, it's gonna be uh, hardware dedicated for storage and etc. etc. Okay. So if anyone have no more questions, maybe I can come back on servers technology to make sure that everyone is aware of what is BMC and what is it made for, and what is a management and normal management interface. Also, I can, even if it's not hardware related, I can start to talk about Linux if you're interested before it will articulate with the next sequence. So we'll start with server. Okay,
Okay.
as said yesterday, you have two kinds of servers mainly. The one that comes in tower, which you will probably not be facing in HPC world, since in HPC we aim to use the maximum density, and to get such a density we are using blades. So it's gonna be always some rackable servers to get the maximum density, and to also it provides facility for cabling and so on, and everything is made as a standard because we love standards. Um, and in IT, we do need standards, and we love those standards, and we try as much as possible to stay away from what we call proprietary. Proprietary for us is the exact reverse of a standard. If I can take an example, maybe that will be more speaking for you guys. Just consider on your smartphone, for instance, the jack socket, so the one where you plug your headphone. Imagine that the 3.5 millimeter jack, stereo jack that is used for a headset. imagine that it would be proprietary. It will. I don't think none of you would be very happy, and we would feel it as a regression. It has been the same in the past with chargers. Actually, in our continent, the European Union, a few years ago, they forced manufacturer to use a standard charging interface. So the deal has been very simple. They said, okay, we cannot force you, but if you want to sell something in the European Union, it will have to comply with that. So no smartphone, no cellular phone, whatever, will be allowed to be imported in the European Union if it's not using either micro USB or USB Type-C for the most recent ones, but at least an industry standard. So that is why we love standards. And Ethernet is a standard, and everything you can find, I mean, standard stuff you can find on the server will be standard as well, since it is built on x86 hardware, compliant hardware architecture and platform. So almost all that you will find in a server will not be proprietary, apart a few exceptions if you go for IBM, for Sun, for whatever. But um, for to take an example taken from yesterday question from one of you guys regarding an Oracle server, that must be a Sun actually, because Oracle has never been a manufacturer, but it's about Sun, which was a server manufacturer. And Oracle and Sun as well were known to be prone to make proprietary things. And there's a lot of actors in IT that would like to make you prisoners of their ecosystem. Starting with Microsoft is well known, but on the hardware side, we have a few competitors very good for that. On the smartphone market and computing markets, you have Apple is most famous for that. Apple is a specialist of proprietary things. This is in their ADN, I would say. Another one well known is Sony. Sony is very well known for that. Um, but if we are back to IT, you can find that in everything, even in software. Oracle is one of them. So that's why if we are in an open discussion now at the end of discourse, so I won't spend time to make a magistral course on on this aspect, but I will just give you um, those few advices for you guys when you will be in a position to make a decision or to sign for, say okay, shall I go for that or for that? And always bear in mind that if you don't go for something standard, you will pay it, and you will pay it for a long time. And you will also probably pay to get rid of it. So it's sometimes better to go for a solution that is standard, even if it can looks a bit less polished and easy to use than some of other solution when you have all-in-one. And there is some cases when you could be tempted to say, okay, I will go for that because the manufacturer is doing me a better price, or it's doing this feature and this feature and this feature. But you always have to look at the only thing you want to look is, okay, is there an interoperability with other equipment? And the other question you want to ask is, okay, how can it scale, and how will I manage it using automation? Automation is something we'll see this afternoon, and this will be the main part of your practical session. So you will discover the wonderful world of automation and automation applied to IT, I mean, because there is automation in the industry for the factories and so, but we have automation also for IT. So when you consider buying a hardware or purchasing a new solution or whatever, ask yourself the question is, okay, is it standard how it is administered, how it is configured? Uh, I mean, at the end. So don't be fooled by a front end, a graphical GUI, graphical user interface, or so on, because it seems easy at the beginning, but you have not the real power with that. So even when it comes to hardware, it's important to make a choice. I told you yesterday I'm originally a Cisco guy, so I worked for years and years with Cisco, but I cannot recommend Cisco because of the price first, because of their propension to make a lot of proprietary things and protocols which are not really interoperable. In a lot of domains, Cisco launched technologies that are usable or features that are usable only with Cisco and that are not always playing well with other standards. So that is an example of what you want to get rid of. But it can be applied to a lot of things, even for storage or whatever. So depending of what will be your position, I encourage you to be very careful before purchasing either hardware or software, because you will not pay it only when you buy the stuff. You will pay it the whole time you will keep using it, and you will, as per said, you will probably pay again to get rid of that when you will realize that it's it is compromising interoperability with something else. So just to refer to, I don't remember the name. One of you guys asked me a question yesterday regarding BMC on Oracle server. This is typically something relevant about what I'm trying to say. Since this server uses standard BMC, which is meant for administering offline without a living system, I mean, a bare metal host without nothing on it. It is meant to send basic command to the machine, start, stop, restart, etc., or to get a console, a local console on it, as if we were in front of the machine itself with a KVM, keyboard video mouse. And all of that relies on a standard called IPMI, and also Redfish more recently. But the thing is, the approach the user had is to use what he has been told to do, because the manufacturer doesn't really want that you use IPMI. Oracle is happy when you can sell you some new tools for administering um, its hardware. So this is not their interest to make you autonomous and using standards. Our interest is that you use their solutions, but your interest is to have the most proper integration with your existing information system. Yesterday, we talked about Netbox. Netbox is definitely something that every aspiring uh, data center manager, technical manager, or any hardware guru should consider, since it provides you with what we call a CMDB. The CMDB is a big database which is managing all of your assets, all of your hardware assets, and moreover, it will manage all the configuration associated with that. So you will have a logical view of your data center, a logical view of all your assets and configuration associated with it. When you start to go with big infrastructure, it is something mandatory because you will have thousands of hosts, thousands of IP addresses, many different subnets with different associated VLANs, many different network equipment, and all these things are living. I mean, this hardware is using firmware, and these firmwares are interacting with your hardware. So you will want to have all that up to date, as you would manage any organization. Or as a farmer, you will manage your cows um, or your sheep. And as a good farmer, you must know exactly how to organize your beast and give them the right feed and etc., and give them the right number and the right name, etc. So it's a bit like the same. We are modern farmers, you know. So this a data center must be seen as a big farm, and servers are your best. So you want to treat them the best you can, and you want to administer them with the most proper way, with the nicest product for them. Okay. So if maybe you have questions specific on servers, you can ask them. I just would like BMC to be very clear for you. It will not be mandatory for the practice, but I surround this point especially because you won't have an opportunity to practice BMC during the practice because you will use a virtual machine. So that's why it's one of the things that you won't see during practicing. And I'd like it to be very clear for you, or for those who are not already using it. It's very comfortable to have a second access. It's like a second chance. For instance, if I will give you a very simple real life example of use of a few real life example of BMC. Let's say, okay, you are in charge of managing a server, whatever kind of server. This server has, for now, only one interface, network interface configured for its management. So you are not living in data center. Your office is not in data center. Your office is somewhere. So you are not disturbing yourself. Once the machine has been physically set up, you went with the console, etc. Once the machine has been physically set up, all the rest you will do remotely using SSH. I hope you guys are already familiar with SSH. If not, you will get. It is a universal tool and something like a kind of a Swiss Army knife. But
Yeah,
basically,
yeah, we are
you will
familiar
want to
with
use.
SSH.
Okay, you are familiar with SSH. Yeah, I was not sure actually with what you saw already. But SSH is not only useful for basic client connection to open a terminal session. SSH is really a Swiss Army knife. I won't tell further for now, but it can be used for encapsulate or provide connectivity to proxy file connections or make port redirections or do circumvent firewalls or port restrictions and things like that. So in a lot of cases, SSH can come very, very handy. So let's say, back to our use case, you are in charge of managing a machine, a server, and you deployed physically this server. It is running fine. Everyone's happy, etc., etc. And one day you realize that, oh, okay, my network configuration should be updated because for some reason, you want to you change gateway, or you want to change something, or you have an IP overlap, or for whatever reason you want to make an action, or because of an error, you for some reason you are in SSH and you take down the interface. If you are taking down, and you will be allowed to do that. By being root, you can do everything you want on your system. We'll come back to that later on Linux, but basically root has every right on everyone and everything. It can even kill itself. Um, so it sounds counterintuitive, but it's very often you will fall in such a case where you are forced to cut the branches you are sit on. And this is what happens if you take down your management interface, which is the one you are connected through to connect to your SSH session. It is where a BMC comes very handy. Because your system is isolated, you have no more access to your system. You are basically stuck because you cut the interface that was bringing you to this same system. So the solution here is to say, okay, no problem. I just connect to my BMC, and using your BMC, you can get a serial console. So you will get in IP, in using network, you will connect to your BMC, and then from your BMC, you will open a serial connection up to your system, to your hardware. So internally, BMC is linked to one of the port of the COM port of the serial port. And also, I would like just talk very shortly about serial ports. Serial ports is something very venerable. It can sound old. It can sound very old style to you guys. I know you are using USB, FireWire, and things. So if when we talk about serial ports, we talk about uh, about 70s. So it has been designed around 70s. But serial port is something brilliant since it doesn't require almost nothing to work. A serial port is just three wires, or two wires, I would say. One RX and one TX, and that's it. And you're done. With serial port, you have an universal access to anything. So every one of you that has been involved at some point with configuring configuring an advanced switch, a manageable switch, knows what is a serial port and how important it is. So this is why every server, even in 2021, is still shipped with serial port, because this one is always working. It is require almost nothing to work, and this is your last chance when everything is broken. Even the highest storage, the biggest storage, would cost $100,000. They still have a serial port, because when you break everything, when the controller is unreachable, it is in an infinite loop or whatever, the only thing that will still work is the serial port. And it is very easy to carry it on our IP. So this was a parenthesis important with serial port. And for your information, this is what is used by BMC at the end when you are using what we call SOL, a serial over line. session. It means that you get a console, you get a serial console through through an SSH session on an IPMI, sorry, an IPMI session. You get the serial port, an access to the serial port of the machine, and your kernel will redirect its console to this serial port. So this is a bit an advance. I don't know how familiar you are with kernel, if you already know what is a console, but kernel or Linux, when you start Linux, you are basically you are in front of a console, a virtual console. But historically, the console was a serial console. So this is how it was working with terminal. Also was physical terminal, was physical machine with just a display and that's it. No hard disk, nothing, just a display and a serial port to connect to a mainframe. So, but in modern world, in modern kernels are still able to use, are using virtual console indeed, but each kernel, every kernel knows how to redirect not only on video card, but also on console, on serial console. So it will redirect its output, the keyboard, and so you get the console in both output with console output and the input with the keyboard, and all of this will go through serial port. This is also why it is very important to master your system using console instead of using fancy graphical user interfaces. So always keep that in mind. The real power is in the console, not in the graphical interface. The graphical interface is cool because it can sound intuitive. It can help in some cases, but I would not feel comfortable if I was only mastering something using its graphical interface without having an idea of how it's going under the hood. Because today everything is crashed. You can just boot in recovery. You won't get a graphical stuff. You will just get a shell. That's it. So unfortunately, I have no time for this session. Maybe in the future, I could show you advanced recovery trick. But this is something really very important to know how to get from nothing. So it can be either applicable on hardware or on the software, because especially on the server, hardware and software are very linked together, very bound together. So very often when you will have to troubleshoot something, a machine that won't start or so on, BMC will be at the rescue, since it will permit you remotely to see how it is going as if you were in front of the machine. So you can see the actual start. You can go in BIOS and things like that, which are not possible with a normal PC. You can reach the machine only when the system is started and if you have proper driver loaded for your network card and your network card is configured. It makes a lot of conditions. But with BMC, you can have hands on your machine from the first second. So you can see every little thing that starts from the beginning of your machine power on till the crash. And you can see exactly what's going on. Because if you are using only remotely with SSH, you won't see all what happened from the machine boot till the operating system is properly booted. So if you have a crash or whatever, you are basically blinded when you are in remote, unless you can afford to go yourself on the machine. You cannot do nothing. You are blinded. Another very interesting use case of a BMC is also the fact of being able to redirect a boot device. I will give you a real life example. Let's imagine you have 100 or 1000 machines to deploy, 1000 servers. It is not realistic to want to deploy them manually. For several reasons, it would take a lot of time and the reproducibility will be very, very, very bad.
Camille,
Mhm.
we can see your slides.
Because there is no slide. This is an open discussion for that.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah, for hardware, no, I don't have no more slide to show you. The next will be this afternoon. Yeah, unfortunately, I had no time to prepare something relevant for BMC. And neither, I don't have no more for hardware, unfortunately.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. So that's why I'd be glad to take this opportunity. If you have questions, I could answer on the whatever subject you want.
Any questions?
Any question, guys? Okay. So,
I think no questions.
okay, right, fine. I was about to give you a last example of last use case in real life for BMC. Is for instance, you have a lot of machines to deploy, a lot of servers to deploy. Um, and obviously you don't have an access to the machines themselves, physical access. You only have a network access, and the machine servers are empty, have no system on them. Media will be, for instance, an ISO. You are, I guess, most of you are familiar with what is an ISO. An ISO image of a bootable DVD or CD, used to set up, for instance, a Red Hat, Debian, or so on. And you will instruct using BMC your BIOS to boot on the ISO image that will be emulated as a CD-ROM or DVD-ROM. So your BIOS will be believing that is dealing with a real DVD-ROM, DVD drive or a real CD-ROM drive containing an actual Linux distribution setup. And this is brilliant since you can, using that, you can deploy without any other interaction a machine remotely from scratch. I mean, you take it out of the box, you put some power cord on it. You do not even start it. Just put a power cord on it. Just put a network cable into BMC. Make the BMC handle properly by DHCP indeed, so you can get an IP to reach it, and that's it. Using only BMC and IPMI, you will be able to remotely start the machine, power it on, to map it an ISO file, an ISO image of DVD of CD, to boot, to instruct BIOS to boot on this virtual media, and then to install your world distribution, your world Linux distribution. So this is something brilliant which is permitted by BMC. And also in HPC world, we use another technique which is called PXE, which stands for basically for pre-boot execution. But PXE is actually a technology that instruct your BIOS, your motherboard, to instead of booting on hard disk or booting on DVD or booting on another virtual media or whatever, it will use the network card to send specific packets, such as the DHCP client would do, and DHCP will handle that and will reply, but we'll see that process later on this afternoon. And you will practice that when you will deploy blue bankies and when you will do practicing. So, but just so you will be a bit more comfortable when you will face it, so you will know what is PXE and what is used for. Okay, so the principle is the same. You start from a bare metal host, an empty host. You just remotely start it, and the network card will send a specific packet to DHCP that will instruct it to download an image, a bootstrap from a TFTP server that will permit to boot in a minimalistic way, that will permit to boot your machine and then to fetch an image and the whole installer for a Red Hat or whatever distribution you want. So this is called PXE boot. And this, I can say it's almost yeah, a standard for HPC. Most of the HPC installation are made with that, since the compute nodes, what we call the compute nodes, are, as we say, almost stateless. So we can reinstall them, whatever the reason, we can reinstall them at any time. We do not keep some data on them. Okay. One more thing I would like to share with you. Just 1 second, I'm looking. Okay. I like to share this document. Can you see my screen? Hello?
Can see your screen.
Can you see my screen, guys?
Yes, yes, please. We can see it.
Okay. So this is a
But
very interesting timeline.
it's not so clear. If you
Yeah, I
can
know.
zoom in.
Yeah, no, if I zoom in, you will not see nothing. This is the entire, you will see. Okay, so this is why I can not zoom. I will zoom after. Okay, it's just to give you an idea of distributions, of
Okay.
Linux distribution. I will zoom after. So you will see on the very left, and here you have the timeline. Okay, I will zoom. Linux started roughly in early 1990, sorry. And here are the mother, what we call the mother distributions. Debian was one of the first one. As you can see here, you have Slackware, which is a bit less famous, and you have Red Hat here that appeared a bit later than Debian. And here you can see how much distribution are derivated from Red Hat. If you look closely here, you will see maybe CentOS that maybe you know. Let me browse a bit. Yeah, you can see Red Hat CentOS here, etc., etc. You see Oracle Enterprise, Oracle Linux, which is actually Red Hat based. I can show you a few others, but most of them are not very famous here. But you will find a lot of distributions that you might already know. And if you look at this picture, what you will understand is that roughly, or here you have still other mother distribution, but they are really not very used. Arc is not very famous, and Gentoo also is famous but not all very used. And this is other branches and their descendant. Okay, so now if I zoom back, okay, you will
Please
see
let's
that
reduce the
roughly
noise.
Red Hat
Hello
and
guys, please let's reduce the
Debian,
noise.
especially Debian, if I take here, see how many distributions are derivated from Debian. See how many distributions are derivated from Red Hat here. So when you see that, it gives you an idea of the importance of choosing its distribution and the importance to know the two big main distributions. So for every Linux aspiring guru, it's I would say it's mandatory to know well the two big families, the Red Hat families and the Debian family. Personally, I would strongly advise you to go more likely for Debian because it is intrinsically better quality, I would say. But I agree with you that most of the HPC installation, most of the HPC cluster you will meet probably will be using Red Hat. The reason for that is that Red Hat is a commercial distribution, and while Debian is not, it's a community distribution. And the difference is Debian does not offer commercial support to companies. So that's why a lot of companies, especially the ones that were not very knowledge in Linux or which were not early adopter, um, that that made enter Linux in their ecosystem. I would say lately, and were not too much self-confident in regard of Linux, were more prone to switch to Red Hat, just because to feel more comfortable in case they wanted to get some commercial support. But for you guys, if you are in a position to make a decision once more, uh, let me tell you that definitely Debian is a better choice. I mean, generally speaking, for Linux, when it comes to Linux, and it can handle brilliantly what Red Hat does in a less proprietary way. I would say that Red Hat is a bit it's a kind of Microsoft for Linux. Okay. Uh, so given that, I think it's going to be all for this morning. Just to remind you that um, making the good choice is very important. Whatever the case, uh, it, it it can apply to either to hardware or to software distribution or to database also. It is very important to make the right choice when it comes to database. The most common example is Oracle. This is, I cannot say it's a bad product. Oracle is brilliant, but it's a kind of poison if you ask me. Uh, Oracle is a kind of poison since a lot of enterprise adopted Oracle, uh, either directly or shipped with another product. And when you start to go with Oracle, you are often forced to stay with Oracle. And you have to buy a license, which costs a lot at the beginning. And every year you will have to pay a kind of maintenance license, um, which can be a problem. And also are using a lot of proprietary things in Oracle that will make your life not too easy at all. At least as a software architect, if you want to make interoperate with other database, and on top of that, you have other consideration which often makes Oracle not a really good choice. And also some limitation in terms of file system comes with some versions of Oracle, among a lot of limitations. So once more, I would not encourage you to go to Oracle. It can be a good choice for some very specific use case that you won't be facing in HPC world. However, this is one of the best example I had of misused database. I mean, a case of where Oracle has been used where it should not. So I don't mean it doesn't work. I mean the footprint is gigantic. The entry ticket is gigantic. The memory footprint, CPU footprint, and a lot of things. Uh, you will pay them for nothing, and you will pay just to get troubles and just to get, I mean, increased load for administering and increased taxes, licenses, and so on, without taking benefit of what Oracle could bring you. Mm. So that's why when it comes to DB, it's simple enough. You have to make your choice if you want traditional database between MySQL, or now it's called MariaDB, but it's exactly the same. MySQL, PostgreSQL for traditional relational database. And for NoSQL, you have a lot of choices, starting with Elastic, MongoDB, and others. So I think it's going to be it if you do not have other questions. It is already 50. Yeah, if you want, we can use 10 minutes if you have open questions or whatever you want to discuss.
Are there any questions, comments, discussions from anyone? Any comment?
Any comment? Fine. Okay.
I
So,
think no comments.
all right. Fine. And anyway, for all these, if some of you have specific questions, um, not especially related to what I presented by on Connex domain. Please just let me know that directly by mail, or you can ask my contact to facilitator. So I will do my best to answer you. And then I think it's going to be over for this morning. I will let you go gently to lunch. And we'll, we'll meet you again at 10 p.m. then. 10
Y-
p.m. Oh, sorry, 2
Sorry.
p.m. Sorry, 2 p.m. Local time.
Okay, 2 p.m. local time here.
Okay, if it's fine for you. So what will be covered this afternoon? Let me check. Yes, we have Linux system will be short because, as we said yesterday with facilitators, you had already been briefed on that. I think automation deployment would be interesting to talk about, but I won't go very deep, but at least make sure that you have everything to arrive comfortably when you will enter the practical session with Benoit. Virtualization in cloud, same. You will see again with Benoit. I arranged it. I arranged yesterday with him to make sure that you will see again what need to be to make sure to emphasize both virtualization and containers because it's something pretty important. And if we remain some time after that, we'll focus on if you have other questions on storage, you want me to focus again on storage, we can do. If not, I suggest that we go for networking. Well, unless unless we have too much to say with virtualization and cloud. But I think it should be feasible to put all those in the time we have for this afternoon. I think so.
Okay.
All right. So I see you at 2 p.m. then. I wish you
Yeah, 2 p.m.
nice
local time here.
lunch. Local
Okay.
time 2 p.m. All right.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, guys. Talk to you later and
Yeah.
enjoy your meal.
Thank you. Yeah. See you later.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.